Welcome back to Empowerment Radio. We are talking about stress, how to stress better, how to use stress to actually find more about yourself that is true and let go of those things that you just have taken on and they are not your truth. So stress can be a very powerful catalyst and an impulse for you to just say, okay, something inside of me is not okay. Of course, we can change demands, we can try harder, put more energy in, put more money at the problem. But if this stress resists all those changes, chances are there is something inside of us that needs to be looked at and is just not working right. Now, stress, don't feel stressed to call in and ask a question, because I'm sure some of you have a burning question about stress. Some of you may feel like, well, that's all interesting, these guys talking about this, but they don't know my stress. They don't know what I'm dealing with. So, well, I don't. Call in 1-800-930-2819, or you can also just type in a question in Transformation Talk Radio, or go to the Facebook Live page where you can actually see our little faces and you can type in a question there. Again, 1-800-930-2819 is the phone number. So Art, yeah, we talked about limiting beliefs, and we talked about how limiting beliefs are basically the source of a lot of stress. You had this with not being good enough, having maybe not being smart enough. I can totally relate to both of them, which caused me a lot of stress and anguish and pushed me into doing more and having to perform and not really find purpose. But how do we identify limiting beliefs? Because a lot of people, you start with stress, you feel there is something wrong with you. That only adds to the belief that you're not good enough because no one else seems to have stress. So that doesn't make you necessarily so aware of your limiting beliefs or your purpose. What would you suggest people do just to step a little bit back and look at their beliefs and identify what's working and what's not working?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, put on your courageous hat and start the exploration, because that's what it takes. Because we don't try to go after them and learn from them because they are uncomfortable. And when we stop denying our ability to feel uncomfortable, denying our suffering, we can move towards it and learn from it. And something that I do with clients is a kind of a purpose discovery session that does just that. Like, it digs into not trauma by any means, but just the personal stories in our lives that are really connected to emotion, because that's what we hang on to. Things that are tied to emotion, both high vibrational and low vibrational emotional experiences, are what we remember. And oftentimes in this work, we reverse engineer that low vibrational emotional experience that happened back when we were a little kid, and see where that experience has given us, maybe we've hung on to it from maybe a maladaptive side, but in that there's something very adaptive. And so looking at our limiting beliefs, unearthing those limiting beliefs, seeing where they have actually shaped our lives, and perhaps on the other end of suffering been a lot of meaning and purpose, you can start to create a roadmap of what it is you are most profoundly intended to do in this life. And like for me, when I went through this experience, and mine turned out, my quote purpose statement that I ended up with was to create the space for emotional leadership so people can human better. And all of this came from some significant, call it suffering if you like, but even more so limiting beliefs, and being able to take that and turn something that is so profoundly meaningful to me into something that's really positive, that gives me, I make all of my decisions, Dr. Friedemann, based on that, like how I engage with who I engage with from a client standpoint, decisions professionally and personally, is like, is this an opportunity to help somebody human better? And taking somebody through that process and giving them the access, leading them to the access of those obstacles that have been in the way for so long, and just giving them a hand, helping them lift themselves up over it to the other side and go, oh, okay, I can see where that darn thing has kept me from doing X, Y, and Z. And now I am moving on from it. But you learn, and there's appreciation in that as well, which is, there's no blame, there's no fault. It's just like, I see where you've helped me. I see why you're there. And it's all protection. We all get into this stuff all for protection. We may not realize it, it's non-conscious, but it's all protection.
So let's talk about a specific story of a client that you would say was a good example of looking at, maybe these old challenges or traumas, having some limiting beliefs because of it, getting into this maybe performance stress-based living, and then shifting out of it. So what would be someone that you have worked with?
Would you be okay with me just using my own personal example?
Sure.
So I'm not using a client example? Okay. When I think of my scholastic career, my scholastic experience and my career up until maybe 2 years ago, it was very much controlled by self-limiting beliefs. Like, you're not smart enough to be here. You're not good enough to be doing this. You need to do X, Y, and Z to be worthy of the role that you're in, of all the financial reward that you're receiving. And because of that, there was very little joy in all of the professional success and scholastic success that I had. And in better understanding of where that came from and what led me to those beliefs, those stored emotions, like what you like to work, what you work with, gave me a ton of clarity onto why I was thinking and feeling and running those same patterns for so long, that kept me from not achieving in a very profound way, but not enjoying it. And like the last 10 to 12 years of my career up until this point were doing some of the most meaningful work that I could possibly do, creating and architecting employee well-being programs. But because it was driven from this avoidance motivation or these self-limiting beliefs, I wasn't really experiencing a ton of joy from that. And then going into that and understanding where that came from and why that was through all of this discovery work, wow, just it just takes a shaded lens off of when you think about stressed lens, like it changed my perception of not only self, but how I viewed my experience in the world. And so that's the power of doing this work. And you can't do it on your own. I guess you could, but it's really hard to do it on your own, to access that and to have an outside of the bottle conversation about it. But I'm telling you, when you do it, it's freedom. It's freedom.
I mean, what's so fun about this example is that on paper, you were a highly successful person who did also on top of it, crazy athletic things that others can only dream about, like, several Ironmans and so on. I mean, you are really someone who is a high achiever, but like many high achievers, you also didn't really feel it was ever enough. And I think that's what is so interesting about stress, that we can see stress there as pointing out to us that something that we are experiencing in life, even though on paper it is really checking all the boxes of this is what we're supposed to do, make money, win awards, be fit, look good, have a great marriage, we are still miserable. That is where the stress tells you why. Why are we still miserable? Why are we still dealing with stress when everything is actually exactly the way we are supposed to do it, that we are told to do it? And that's
Yep.
what I think made your journey so important. And now you do something. I mean, how would you say now when stress comes up? Because it still comes up. I have still
Sure.
some stress and anxiety from time to time. So what do you do now when it comes up?
I welcome it. I appreciate it. I learn from it. I listen to it. I find the wisdom in it. And listen, it's not always comfortable. And you know what? It's not supposed to be. If it was comfortable, if it felt good, we really wouldn't do anything with it. The discomfort is to get our attention, and it is our responsibility to listen to it and to answer its questions and to move towards it versus avoid it. And like a great example of that is when we think about, coping and using like exercise, which is the world's greatest medicine. Like when we engage in exercise as a mechanism to avoid stressing versus using exercise to say, hey, I've got all of this energy in me that stress has provided me. I'm going to go use up some of it through exercise, which not only changes your kind of your emotional and cognitive experience of it, but the research on the physiology of what it has, the changes, the adaptive changes it has on your body is really profound, just on how you look at it. Like the work of Dr. Kelly McGonigal, speaks to that, and it's just fascinating. And knowing that there's so much choice that we have in this, and it's that when we feel like we're completely disempowered is when things really feel threatening, and there's a heck of a lot more choice in the presence of stress that we owe ourselves and have the responsibility to engage with it and not be afraid of it. That's what I do.
I think that's really important to remember, that if emotions would feel comfortable, we probably wouldn't understand their message, and we would definitely not listen to them. Just like we only listen to the kids usually when they have a temper tantrum. So when we come back, we're going to talk about some very proactive ways and tools to deal with stress that you can implement starting today. Stay tuned.